All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Becky Siekmeyer, and I am the director of the SciTechsperience internship program. I'm here today with my colleague, Kip Graham, employer network manager at the Software Guild.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so glad you could be here. This webinar is part of the SciTechsperience STEM Job Search webinar series. And Kip and I are here really because we're joining forces on a few different topics in this series, because although we work at different organizations, the job seekers that we work with have many of the same questions about the job search process.
Absolutely.
So we put our heads together to bring you information on a few of those common topics. In this segment, we are going to be talking about crafting excellent cover letters and emails. But before we get into that, I'm going to talk a little bit about SciTechsperience because many people may not be familiar with what SciTechsperience is, so we're just going to talk about that real quickly. This is a program that connects college STEM majors to paid internships in small for-profit Minnesota businesses. We work with hundreds of companies in science, IT, engineering, and manufacturing sectors, and many others as well. This is a free statewide program that's funded by an appropriation from the Minnesota State Legislature. We've been around since our pilot in 2012, and since then we've placed almost 1,000 students in internships across the state. So our 2018 and 2019 program year, our plan is to place at least 650 students through the program.
Wow.
And what's unique about SciTechsperience is that employers are provided with a cash reimbursement of 50% of their interns' wages, and that's worth up to $2,500. So it's a big incentive for these employers to hire an intern. And oftentimes employers tell us that because of that wage match, they'll hire an intern when they wouldn't have otherwise, or they maybe are going to hire more than one instead of just the one intern. So this is a great resource for college students that are pursuing either associate's, bachelor's, or master's degrees in STEM fields. This program will help you discover hundreds of opportunities in small companies that you may not find anywhere else. So it's really kind of a one-stop internship shop. Check out our website, scitechmn.org, for more information. The enrollment form can be accessed directly from the homepage. And with that, Kip, why don't you tell us about the Software Guild?
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds like a fantastic program. The Software Guild is actually a little bit different. We are a software development boot camp. So we take students from all ages and backgrounds, and we teach them how to be a software developer in one of two languages, either Java or C#.net. It's a 12-week program, and it really is a boot camp. It's 9 o'clock to 4 o'clock. Monday through Friday for 12 weeks straight, with about 20 hours of homework on top of that.
Oh, wow.
So it's really intensive, but at the end of that program, we have a 90% placement rate in getting people jobs as software development professionals. We use proven verifiable methods to teach skills so our students understand and retain them. Our aptitude test is part of our admissions process, where we require pre-work for beginner level bootcamp initiates to ensure that they're ready for the Software Guild when they come in. All of our instructors have about 10 or so years of experience in the industry. They're all already developers, not just professors, but actually developers. And when they graduate, we work with over 450 employers that is available to every single Software Guild student. And we really embrace a policy that's called Software Guild for Life. And once you've been through the Software Guild, what that means is that you have access to your fellow alumni and the employer network for the rest of your career. So you can come back to learn more at a reduced rate as well.
Oh, that's amazing. That's awesome. All right. Well, with that, why don't we move on to why people are here. I think they've come because they're interested in learning how to write cover letters and emails. So the good news is that writing these types of communications is not rocket science. You simply need to understand the etiquette in order to craft messages that are going to best represent you and help you put your best foot forward. So we're going to start with traditional cover letters, and by that we mean it's something that you're going to print out and mail or send as an attachment in an email. So if you're sending an email, you should include a PDF of a traditional cover letter as well as a PDF of your resume. So why include a PDF?
Well, you want to include a PDF because oftentimes the person reviewing your cover letter is going to share it with someone else. If that person prints your cover letter or is using a different version of Word, the letter is going to look in a different format than the one that you had, and it's not going to stay intact. So it's going to look very jumbled and kind of strange.
Right. And so, why are cover letters important? And it's essentially a cover letter usually serves as your first introduction to a prospective employer. And just like meeting someone in person for the first time, you want to make a good impression.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk about the main purpose of a cover letter.
Well, the main purpose of a cover letter is to market yourself and introduce yourself to an employer. It should be brief, just a few paragraphs, precise and business. Like basically cover letters detail, the offer that you give to the company, your relevant qualifications with regards to the specific requirements listed by the employer and the job itself.
All right. So let's talk about the anatomy of an excellent cover letter. We're going to provide an example, but the web really is full of other examples. Just Google the words cover letter and include your major or the type of position you're applying for, and you'll find lots of additional examples. So, and we're going to include some resources that we like at the end of the presentation. Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's jump into the anatomy. How long should it be?
Well, it should only be about a page. The body of the letter should be no more than 1 page in length. And if you can, keep it to 3 paragraphs. That would be ideal.
Okay. At the top, what kinds of things should be included?
At the top, it's very important to remember putting your contact information. Start with your name, your city, your cell phone number, and your email address. Then obviously list the company's physical address as well as the date the letter was written.
One thing I noticed here is at the top we have just the city. Why not put your full address in?
It's a great question. A lot of places still teach putting in your full address. We actually find that leads to some discrimination in some cases.
Oh, interesting.
An employer might think that you live too far away for this job and you wouldn't want to make the commute.
Okay.
Or maybe they have some preconceived notions about what neighborhood you live in.
Oh,
so you don't want to do that. In the era where you're contacted via email anyway, wait to put your physical address down until the application specifically asks for it or you're signing the offer letter.
Oh, that's really good. I hadn't heard that before. That's fascinating. Let's talk about the important piece of addressing the letter to a person. Is it okay to just say to whom it may concern?
It can be, but you really want a name. Do your homework. Try to find that name. Job postings for SciTechsperience list the contact person in the job description,
right,
as well do many other sites. Or they'll list at least who the letter should be addressed to. If they don't, try to Google it. Try to find a name of the hiring manager or human resource personnel. LinkedIn's fantastic for this. Company directories on their website are another great way to do it. Or simply use your network and look at the profiles of people that you can find through them.
Yeah, I think that's really an important thing because I think it makes you just look kind of lazy if you don't take the time to at least find someone's name. I mean, because with everything available on the internet, there really isn't an excuse.
Yeah, absolutely. Put a few minutes into it. And if you absolutely can't find that person, use something like Dear Hiring Manager. Don't write to whom it may concern. It seems lazy.
Right. It sounds like you could be addressing it to the janitor.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Okay. So let's jump into the first paragraph. What should we be doing here? What's the point of the first paragraph?
Well, the first paragraph is all about introducing yourself. Let the employer know how you heard about the job and who you are. And especially if you've heard about the job through a current employee at the company or a referral that the employer knows, definitely list that right away.
Okay.
If you found the job through your program at SciTechsperience, be sure to mention that you're an approved student of the program, just so they know a little bit about you. Include the position you're applying for because they most likely have many positions. You want to be very clear about that. Why you're applying for that position, and make sure you express interest in the job itself.
All right. Let's read through our the example that we have on the screen in case you can't read it. It says, Dear Ms. Jackson, it is with great enthusiasm that I submit my application for the software development internship at Dream Company, Inc. Bob Conway, a software developer at Dream Company, encouraged me to apply. As a software engineering major at the University of Minnesota Twin Cities, I know my coursework and coding skill set will make me an asset to Dream Company's project team. All right.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a great introductory paragraph. It tells me who you are, how you found out about the job, and a little bit about your qualifications as well. So that's a lot of information packed into a very concise message.
All right, very good. Let's take a look at the second paragraph. What should we be doing here?
Well, in the second paragraph is to get a little bit more into the meat of the letter. So let the employer know how you can help them. Show you've done your homework by checking out what the company does, as well as what the specific job position entails. Read through that job description carefully, and it'll provide you clues of what you need to understand what the company is looking for. Don't just state why you're interested in the role, which you definitely should do, but go more in depth into why you're qualified for that position specifically.
Yeah. Do you want to read through what we have on this second paragraph?
Sure thing. So it goes, as you will see from the attached resume, I have been building my coding skills in a variety of roles, including robotics club, hackathons, team projects, and as a volunteer at some nonprofit. I enjoy being challenged and engaging with projects that require me to work outside of my comfort and knowledge set. The requirements of the software developer internship closely match my background and skills. A few I would like to highlight are experienced in designing, testing, and developing software, hands-on software troubleshooting experience, proven track record of proper documentation for future maintenance and upgrades.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome. I think if I got a letter like this and I was a recruiter, that would definitely stand out to me. Looks like we've got a question.
Stacy asks, should we avoid repeating information that we've included in our resume in the cover letter?
That's a good question. So should we avoid repeating information from the resume in the cover letter? You want to take that one, Kip?
Yeah, that is a great question, and it's something that's pretty tricky to do. It's okay to do that a little bit and just maybe highlight some of the more important aspects of your resume. But if you can, try to tell them some things that aren't on your resume or maybe aren't near the top of your resume that you still think are extremely relevant to your qualifications for that role. A lot of the times, recruiters are only going to read the top half of your resume. So if you think there's something great that's at the bottom, put that in the cover letter as well.
Yeah, that's a great. Anything else you want to add to the second paragraph?
In that second paragraph, I think that's a fantastic paragraph. It really focuses on why you're qualified for the role, what skills you bring to the table, and more importantly, what experience gave you those skills to be qualified for the role. It focuses a lot on what the employer is looking for in a candidate.
Yep. And I think another thing that people, especially students who are just starting out in their career, don't be afraid to highlight those club activities and volunteer work, because a lot of times that's kind of how you get your start. You may not have that paid position yet, but you've been willing to put in some time.
Yeah, when you're a student, it's no secret to employers that you're not going to have the extensive career history that others are, and that's just fine. Tell them what you have done. It's going to prove a lot about your passion and your enthusiasm. That'll go a long way.
Right, and sometimes if you're having trouble trying to talk about or quantify what it is you did someplace, look back at the original job description, and you can pull some of those things right out of there to include in a cover letter.
That's a great tip.
Yep. All right, let's move on to finishing up, and what should be included here.
First of all, mention that your resume is included or attached if you're sending an email, and please be sure to actually attach that resume in the email. That's something people forget a lot. If you have an online portfolio or good examples of projects, an online repository like GitHub or Bitbucket, please include a link to that website. That's a great way to show off some of your work that's relevant to the position you're applying to.
Right.
Also, let the company you'd like to talk with them further to learn more about the position and thank them for their consideration. And it can considerably, and just be mindful that they've taken their time to read your letter, and you should thank them for that.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. All right, let's move on to, or we can read through this part. It says, a copy of my resume that details my projects and experience in software development is included. You may also find some examples of my work at nameofwebsite.com. I look forward to speaking with you about this opportunity. My contact information is below. And again, thank you for your time and consideration. All right. So when you sign off, you just say, thanks, Bob. I mean, how should you sign off on your cover letter?
Again, like everything in the cover letter, be professional. To sign off, I strongly recommend the word sincerely. I think that's a great way to close a letter. There's certainly other appropriate ways to close, but I always say sincerely. It's the safest bet. Then put your physical signature, write it out, especially on the one that you're actually mailing in, a physical cover letter, but make sure you print off your name in case your cursive is as bad as mine. And then, of course, include your contact information. I know it's at the top of the cover letter, but include it again, email address, phone number once more. You want to make it as easy as possible for these people to get in touch with you.
Right, absolutely, because if you make people search for basic information like that, if they have to look too hard to find it, they may just bypass you and go on to the next. They'll have a whole stack of applications potentially. And
absolutely. When I worked as a recruiter, I had many times 100 applicants for the same job. If I couldn't find your email address or your phone number very easily, I might have just moved on to the next candidate. And you'd be surprised how many students forgot to do that.
Yeah. Looks like we have another question.
Chandra wants to know, should I start from scratch each time I write a cover letter, or is it okay to work off of a template?
Okay, that's a great question. The question from Chandra is, do you recommend starting from scratch with each cover letter? You want to take that one, Kip?
You certainly can start from scratch with each cover letter. I do recommend having a template, at least of the introduction of your contact information as well as the hello. But if you do use a template with anything more than that, be very careful to proofread and make sure that it doesn't seem like a template letter, that you're customizing it for each and every job. So, because the fastest way to get thrown out of a job is for me to read the wrong job name on there, or if you address it to the wrong individual, or if it's just clear that you copied and pasted it.
Right. Yep. I agree. Yeah. This is where the proofread is really gonna come into play.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about some general rules for cover letters. Really, every time you're sending a cover letter, you should also be sending your resume. Make sure you're sending PDFs. Try to limit your cover letter to one page, and mention that your resume is attached so that they know that they should be looking for that. If you are doing the old-fashioned cover letter and you're sending it via mail, you want to make sure that you use really good quality paper, plain white or off-white, some kind of a neutral color for both the resume and the cover letter, and use a readable font. This is not the time to be trying out some kind of fancy script font. You want to avoid italics and script style fonts. Print your letter and your resume on a laser printer if at all possible, so that that ink doesn't smear, and use a either blue or black pen when you're signing your name. Again, check and recheck for spelling and grammatical errors. Don't just rely on spell check. Get your roommate or someone else to proofread who's got good English and writing skills.
Yeah, Word is not perfect on their grammar and spell check. Please have 1, 2, even 3 people proofread your cover letter to make sure that you're representing yourself in the best light.
Yeah, absolutely. And then again, if you are going to send this via mail, use a flat envelope, an 8.5 by 11 flat envelope, and type the address labels, and use a conservative stamp. I mean, you'd be surprised at the kinds of things that can set off kind of that little red light in a recruiter's mind.
Right, like a stamp with Goofy or Mickey Mouse on the cover or something like that. Yeah, I've seen that. Those are all fantastic examples of what to do with a good cover letter. I've certainly in my day seen plenty of bad cover letters.
And so what does that look like?
The first thing that I notice is when it has a poor appearance, and that can be that the paper is crumpled or that it's there's too much words on the page, or the margins are really thin, so it's really cramped and hard to read.
Okay.
And sometimes, poor font, as you mentioned, is a quick way for me to think less of you as a professional if you're, using a more childish font. I also see a lot of rambling or poorly written text with a lack of focus on how your qualifications are a good match.
Okay.
A lot of people, tend to just ramble on, and this is one of the things that Word won't catch. It won't catch those run-on sentences sometimes. So make sure you're sticking to the points, and the points that your employers care about. Again, poor grammar, punctuation, spelling, typos, those things are huge red flags to any employer. So make sure you're getting someone to proofread that. And one of the biggest problems I see is that cover letters are self-focused instead of employer-focused.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is too many sentences start with I, too many sentences come with an aggressive or pushy tone, or focus on why that person wants the job as opposed to why they'd be a good fit for that job.
Right.
As an employer, I want to know that you're qualified for this role and have the experience that will make you a good fit. I know you want the job, you're already applying,
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
So focus more on that than how much interest you have in the job. You should certainly mention that, but make sure that you're focusing on why you'd be an asset to the company.
Right, because I mean, the thing that stands out for, I've been a hiring manager and had people apply for positions, and the ones that stand out are the ones that say, here's how I can help you solve your challenges. I mean, that's really, you want to remember that this letter is going to be selling the company on why your skills and experience are going to bring value. So like you said, it's okay to state why you're intrigued about the position, but really focus on what you bring to the table.
Yes, exactly.
All right, let's move to emails. So email communication, much of the job hunt now is going to happen via email versus hard copy. So really, it's important to get this etiquette right as well. So let's start off with something as basic as the email address itself.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems pretty basic, but I see a lot of people stumbling on this one. Your email should be formatted as close as possible to first name dot last name at Gmail or whatever email address that you use .com.
So what if I have like cute kittens at gmail.com or Big Hank at Comcast.net? Is that going to fly?
Oh, it is not going to fly.
Okay.
And a lot of people have had their email address for many years, and they have funny names like that. And as a recruiter, I saw those and I shook my head, and you had to have a pretty compelling case for me to email you back if that was the case.
All right.
And that's kind of, I feel like that's self-explanatory to a lot of people, but a lot of people also use mistakes like using a Hotmail address instead of a Gmail address. Hotmail can seem outdated, especially if you're applying for, a job in the technology industry.
Right.
So make sure that you're doing something like that. Comcast can sometimes be the same way even.
Okay.
So we recommend Gmail or maybe your student email address.
Okay.
When you're using your email, be sure to check that inbox at least twice a day, and be sure to look in the junk or spam folders for wayward messages. I know you mentioned that your students sometimes have
I've had students say that one of the employers from SciTechsperience reached out to them because it's a kind of a two-way communication. So employers can reach out to students, or students can reach out to employers, and one of the emails ended up in a junk mail folder. So here's an employer reaching out to the student saying, hey, I saw your profile online. I'd like to talk to you about this internship position, and the student didn't see it. So you sure don't want to be missing those kinds of opportunities.
Absolutely. Just make it a habit to check your spam folder at least once a day or two.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about the subject line. Employers receive tons of emails every day, and many times whether or not an email gets opened really depends entirely on its subject line. So you want to make sure your emails are read, and to do that you need a clear professional subject line, especially if you're sending someone your resume. And that's because the subject line is the first thing people see when they're scanning their inbox. If you leave the subject line blank, it's possible that your email may end up marked as spam or simply get deleted. So because recipients may not be familiar with your name, the subject line is your opportunity to introduce yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, with the subject line, you definitely want to make sure that it gets read. You want to be professional. Don't use any informal words like hey or what's up. Only use professional, polite dialogue. Include the purpose of why you're writing. You know, use keywords related to the reason you're writing, specifically around the job or the position you're interested in.
Good point.
You know, use the job title in the subject line so the employers know what position you're interested in. Many times they're going to have a hiring manager or a recruiter is going to have multiple positions, and if they can see at a glance which position you're looking for, all the better. Mentioning the job title is also very helpful in case they have an automated filter set up in the hiring manager's email.
Oh, say more about that.
Well, a lot of my colleagues have automated filters set up because they get 100, 200 emails a day. So with the right subject line, you can be sure that your application or your email is placed in the appropriate folder for the appropriate job.
Okay.
And it's going to be seen in a timely manner. And if you include your name or referred by, that's also great. Because that's going to tell them how you found out about the job, and the referred by column is absolutely important because if somebody did refer you to that job from within the company, that's going to pique the hiring manager's interest a lot more than those other emails that they're getting.
Yeah, I agree. So you want to be short and specific, and the more specific you can make your subject line, the easier it will be for the recipient to categorize your email quickly and then respond appropriately. And as with the cover letter, you need to make sure that you're proofreading your emails as well. All right, so we have a couple of examples of subject lines. So these are, focused on kind of the IT sector, but, software developer internship dash your name, application for software developer internship, research assistant resume, and then your name, or referred by person's first name and last name.
Yep, and again, that fourth one is definitely the one that you want to go with if applicable, and if you do know somebody, just because having that advocate for you within the company is going to give you a strong leg up over the competition.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's talk about how to address the email. I mean, can you just say, again, like, hey, Bob, what's up?
Sure.
How do you want to approach this?
Of course, you want to use a professional tone. I always like dear Miss or Mr. plus last name. You had mentioned earlier about the Miss or Mrs. thing.
Yes.
I always say err on the side of caution.
Okay. Use Ms.
Use Ms. unless you're absolutely sure they're a Mrs. and that's what they go by. If you don't have the name of the person, address your email to dear hiring manager, or simply start the first paragraph of your message. Use a professional tone. Don't start off with something like, hey, Mike. We talked a little bit about that with the subject line. It might sound basic, but these sort of things and things like using capital letters on names in the beginning of sentences are going to make you look far more professional. You're not sending a text to a friend.
Yeah, we've had students in the program say, I've sent out emails to a couple of companies and no one's getting back to me. And so that's always kind of a red flag for us. And so we'll say, well, why don't you send us the email that you're sending to them, forward an example. And inevitably, that's the problem, is that the email is written so poorly, it's too conversational, it's not professional, and the hiring managers just, they're busy people, they don't necessarily have time to respond to everybody, and so that's one way of just weeding people out.
Yeah, absolutely. Once you've made very strong business connections with your colleagues, sure, send a more casual email. But throughout the entire email process, be formal, be professional, be polite. It's certainly going to help you out throughout the entire process.
And again, I think you really want to use a standard font like Calibri, Arial, Helvetica, Times, at like an 11 or 12 point type. And the reason you want to use a standard font is there are going to be fonts that are consistent across all computers that are, standard fonts on your system. If you use something that's only installed on your computer, it could really look funny on the other end, on the recipient's end.
Absolutely. And on the same note, make sure that your font size is 11 or 12, maybe 13. I've seen it on some computers, especially Macs, where a size 14 will look completely normal on your computer, but when you send it to a PC, the text just explodes off the page and it doesn't look professional at all. So make sure you're keeping that font size low as well.
I think font, like if it gets too big or if you use all caps, it's like someone screaming at you.
Yeah.
Email etiquette. So
please never use all caps. Also, be very sparing with exclamation points, because you see 3 or 4 of them in one email and it just seems unprofessional and overly excited to the point of false.
Right. Yep. I think I totally agree with that. I think another thing that's really important, you kind of talked about a little bit about this with the cover letter in terms of making sure that there's some breathability in terms of like margins and stuff. And well, in an email, you want the message to be short and you want to break up those long paragraphs into separate sections, especially since many emails are read on someone's phone. And if you have one really long paragraph, it's just hard to even follow where you are.
Oh yeah, if I get one of those emails on my phone that it just seem to ramble on with many paragraphs, best case scenario, I'm tabling it for later. And most likely I'm just not going to get to it.
Right. I think the other thing is essentially you're explaining the reason for your email and you want to let the person know that a cover letter and resume are attached. You want to and make sure you attach them. In fact, you want to make sure to do the attachments first. And then do your subject line, then do the email and put the email address in last. You want to make sure that you include an email signature that has your name, your email address, and your phone number. So we have an example of what this might look like. So you've got the email address in there, the subject line. Dear Mr. Felix, attached, please find a copy of my cover letter and resume for the software developer internship at Dream Company, Inc. I look forward to talking with you about this position. Thank you for your consideration. Sincerely, your name, email address, and cell phone number.
That sounds great. You can certainly add a bit of information to pique your reader's interest, but your best bet is to keep it short and simple and let your cover letter and resume do the work of introducing you. And this example certainly does that. It's short, it's concise, but it's also professional and it gets across what you're looking for.
Right. And again, this is one example. There are dozens of examples that you can find online. All right, so a couple things to do before you hit send. Proofread, proofread, proofread. Use spell check, of course, but really ask out someone else to review, someone in your career center, your advisor, professor, parent, mentor, your friend, your roommate. Send yourself a test message.
Yeah, this is something that I do with important emails. The first thing that I do is I send that email that I'm going to send to myself, and then I review it as if I was, in this case, the hiring manager. It's a great test just to make sure that you haven't caught anything. And as you said earlier, my order of operation when creating an email is to put the attachments on first, then write the body, and with the 2-line blank. And when you're finally ready to send it, then you put the email address in and press send, just so that there's no mistakes there.
Right. And another thing that you can do is actually print it out and review it to make sure there aren't any extra spaces or weird formatting, because sometimes that font stuff will show up when you print it and it doesn't when you are looking at it on your own screen.
Also a great idea.
Yeah. Okay. So any other tips?
Well, just once again, I know we've said this about 3 or 4 times now, but don't forget to attach things. It's the most common mistake I see in my job, is that people forget to attach the resume or cover letters. Happens to the best of us. Make sure it doesn't happen to you.
Right.
Again, always send these documents in a PDF. Word documents lose formatting, and when fonts aren't available, they change to just random fonts within Word, it seems like, and it'll make your 1-page beautiful resume or cover letter turn into a 2-page jumbled mess. So a PDF is always the safest bet. If you're sending an email to schedule an interview, this is one of my biggest pet peeves. Provide multiple options for the interviewers to get in touch with you, especially if they ask you. So many times I see candidates say, hey, when are you available to interview? And they respond, oh, I'm available at 9:30 tomorrow. And that's all they give them. These are busy people. Give them as much options as you have. I'm available all tomorrow afternoon or all day the day following, or try to give them as many windows as possible.
Right, absolutely. The other thing we talked about is, if possible, set up instant notifications for incoming emails on your phone. But what are your thoughts on replying via phone versus on your computer?
Wherever you can avoid it, don't reply via the phone. When you're writing on a phone, it's small, it's hard to read. Sometimes your signature doesn't look as professional, and it's hard to judge the length of how much you've written. Go to the computer, use the spell check, see how much you've written, make sure your signature is looking right. It's really going to help you with all that.
Right, especially when phones autofill words that you didn't mean to use.
Yeah, the autocorrect is quite dangerous.
Yeah, right, absolutely. As SciTechsperience students, if you are approached by an employer that you maybe didn't apply to, but they're reaching out to you, be courteous and respond to them, even if you're not interested in their position. This non-response from students is the biggest complaint that we have from employers. So you never want to burn a bridge. And I think the same is true for recruiters.
Oh, yeah. I would pass on this advice, not just to SciTechsperience students, but everyone looking for a job. Just because, a recruiter comes to you with a job that's not a fit or with a company you're not interested in, decline them politely. The recruiters move from company to company in this industry all the time. And even a bad recruiter might have a great job tomorrow. So never burn a bridge. Be kind to everybody. Who knows if they're going to have a great job for you tomorrow or 2 months down the road.
Right. Yeah, I think that's really great advice. All right. That kind of wraps up our most of the content for the webinar, but we did want to share, as promised, some resources that we found that we really like. We've got some great information from actually Boise State, and another company or website that we found called thebalance.com, and they had all kinds of really great blog posts on cover letters and email etiquette, how to apply for jobs via email. And then one thing that we tell students all the time with SciTechsperience is don't forget to visit the Career Center at your college. They have staff on hand that this is what they do, this is what they're trained in, and you're already paying tuition for that service. So make use of it.
Absolutely. These are one of the most underutilized resources that I find. We were talking about proofreading earlier. Get them to proofread your cover letter. When you're sending out an email, send them a draft, say, hey, does this look all right? Bounce ideas off them. They're great people to talk to.
Right, absolutely. All right, well, that pretty well wraps things up for us. Thanks so much for joining us today. We hope you found this information helpful. And our contact information is on the screen if you'd like to get in touch with us. And basically, we just wish you great success in your job and internship search, and have a great day.
Yes, thank you all so much.